Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 18th, 2021, and this is the WORT Board of Directors. I call the meeting to order. It's 7:07 p.m. The first item of business is to adopt the agenda, and the agenda has been out in, thank you, Rosie. The agenda has been out in the shared drive, and so everybody had a chance to see it. I'm going to move my chat window out of the way so I can see. Hello. I'm using my iPad as a second screen, and it's confusing to me, although I'm easily confused. Okay, so are there any corrections to the agenda as we have shown it here? And Kai Brito's not here. So
I did click on the, I don't know if this was changed. I did click on the volunteer report and it was the engineering report.
Oh, that's Dave.
I'll have to check.
Yep.
Yeah, I clicked on the volunteer outreach. Yeah. When you click on the volunteer outreach report, it says engineering committee minutes. I mean, I can find it in the drive, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thanks, Elliot. I'm not going to try to change that right now because I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. And if I tried to do that, bad things would happen. Are there other corrections to the agenda? If there are no objections, we will consider this agenda adopted. So let us make that consideration. By the way, Rosie, there's another document that's called minutes. So if you take minutes on the agenda, it's duplicating the efforts that Marla is doing on the other document. So.
Thank you, Marla.
You're welcome, Rosie. Thank you.
Since it's a Google Doc, two people can edit it at the same time, and two brains are sometimes better than one, especially when we're considering my brain. So the minutes have been in the drive. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes for the July meeting? That says June, but that's an error. Sorry.
I'll fix that.
Thank you. Holy cow, many hands to serve you, just like the octopus car wash. Thank you, everybody. Are there any additions or corrections to the draft minutes from the July meeting? Hearing none, we will consider those adopted without objection. I have received no communications from the public and have not heard from anybody about communications. So we'll consider that as none. The executive committee has not acted since the last meeting, so there are no actions to report, unless I'm wrong on that, and correct me if I'm wrong. We did have an executive committee meeting to discuss strategic planning. Marla made some notes about that. Can I put you on the spot, Marla, to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, no. Let me see. First, am I on volume here? Can you hear? Okay, I hate saying can you hear me because I know you can. Okay, so yeah, we met as an executive committee in response to the request to start planning for some strategic planning. And we discussed the approach to that for Ward, and we as an executive committee agreed to begin the strategic planning process in the next year, which means from August of 2021 through July of 2022 as phase one. And that phase one is going to be an operational review We are going to work with staff and other board members to gather, review, and analyze current operational activities, documentation, and process to best understand where we are before we begin to look at a long-term strategic planning process. We talked at length about the need for a long-term strategic planning process, but we felt to do that first, we needed to understand where we were, what we're looking at, and where we're heading. So our approach will be to start with that operational review.
Thank you. Any thoughts by other board members?
I was just curious as to how you would begin that process. And
Yeah, good question, Dean.
I don't think you need a whole really lengthy explanation. I don't think any of us do. But can you just give me like a brief example of how we go about doing that?
Sure. Well, we thought our first exercise would be to kind of brainstorm with staff and Rosie or Dave, jump in if I got this wrong, to brainstorm with the board members and staff about all the information that we think we need to better understand where we're at currently. So that would be brainstorming what information do we have at our fingertips and start collecting that to start reviewing it. So that could mean, Dean, financial information. It could mean operational processes. It could mean things like job descriptions and policies and bylaws and all of those things that we currently have in place that represent where we're at right now. Does that help?
We don't have a roadmap to where all those are. And you can't plan for the future if you don't know where you are now. So that's, I've already started in the executive committee drive to do a brain dump of all the things that I know, and I'm only about 30% done in terms of who we use for vendors and all sorts of things, how the Google workspace works and who is authorized to be administrators and all those things, so that we can start to bring things together. So, okay. Moving on to
Tom's got his hand up.
sorry, who?
Tom.
Go ahead.
I
That's
just
what
want
that
to
is.
jump in, but just talking about all the documentation, one thing I would like to ask, as we're all going through it, is get rid of the ancient cruft that's out there. There's documents from 2005 that are, and probably even older, that are completely meaningless. They got moved off of one of the internal servers up to Google Drive, and they mean nothing anymore. But that's just going to confuse and muddy the waters as we go forward with all those.
Yeah, that's part of what we have to do is review the old stuff. And I think that we may archive it just for historical purposes, because if somebody wants to write a book about us later. But one of my regrets is that early on in like the 1990s, somebody approached me who wanted to write a book about WORT. And so I gave them a whole bunch of documentation I had from the startup of the station and never heard from them again. And so I really regret that. So I don't want that to happen again. Now that we have Google Drive, that's a lot less likely to happen. So I was not at the finance committee meeting today. Rosie, do you want to handle that, or
Yep.
do we want to let Marty start and Rosie's pick up? I don't care.
Nope, I'm cool. It actually just plays exactly into what we were just saying. One of the main things that the executive committee needs to do any kind of strategic planning is accurate reporting. So we discussed that at great length today in the finance committee meeting. we put a report in here. I'm not going to read it off because I know everybody here is capable of reading. There's no action that we need at this point, but I'm sure there will be some later on as we move and grow. But we did put a summary report in the drive, and it is linked to the Board of Directors agenda as well.
Thank you.
So the only thing specifically that I want to point out, just because I don't want anybody to miss it, because like I said, we can read this, but there will be one change in reporting going forward that I want to make sure that everyone is hearing. And that is that after taking a look at how the data has been being presented, some of the data that comes in from the staff for reasons that are many, come in late enough or even after reporting that the financials that get reported to the board based on the previous month, 15 days ago, changes, which makes the board reports, the treasurer's reports, sort of meaningless. So what we will be doing is 1 month delayed on all reporting, which we discussed this with the staff, and Mary Joy's on board. And that gives us all enough time to have all the different financial institutions and apps and things come in. The reports get to Mary Joy. That gives Mary Joy about 7 days to get the financing committee the information a week in advance of the meeting, which allows us to get you some accurate financials the day of. So that change has been made.
But Rosie, right, the cash flow, the balance sheets would still be up to date.
It's always going to be up to date, but I'll be reporting it as of a month ago or 31 days ago, depending on the number.
Not the profit and loss, but the actual balance sheet of what is in the...
I'm going to report it all the same so that there is not confusion when a balance sheet ends one day and a profit and loss ends a different day, and our budget versus actuals is a different day, So
okay, I just thought the board might want to see, because those numbers don't change on the date, that on that date, that's how much money we had in the banks.
On some of them will be dependent on things that are changing, like the cash flows can change the profit and loss. And so we're just going to do it on one day, nice and simple, all reporting as of. So for example, in September, it'll be all the reporting, all the reports, year to date, year comparison, all that stuff will be as of July 31st, 2021.
Yeah, David, it's Dean. That hands up thing isn't showing up on my screen, but can you call
Yep.
on me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to give Rachel and Mary Jo, this is the first meeting I had of the Finance Committee, and they had done some preliminary meetings prior to this meeting, and seemed to, I just want to give you guys a pat on the back. You guys seem to be moving in a way to be able to present the board with more clarity on the financial statements as they come, and it's actually normal to get a financial statement at a board meeting from the prior month, not the one we just finished. It's very difficult to pull that all together. So I was really encouraged to hear what Rachel and Mary Joy were
Rosie.
How to move forward. Rosie, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You can call me Rachel if you want to.
No, absolutely not. I'm sorry. So anyway, good job is what I was trying to get to.
Thank you. Mary Joy's doing the bulk of it, honestly. We are very, very lucky to have her.
Yes.
And then Dave, is Kai here?
No.
Okay, so
not yet.
Can I just keep going? Because I told Kai I'd cover for programming committee if...
Yes, please do.
Early in the meeting. Okay. So the programming committee meeting, again, there's a report in here. I know everybody knows how to read, but there is an action item that we are asking for. We want to make a motion. And I'm going to give you the two reasons why we're asking for this. One, the programming committee is facing a whole lot of projects coming up in 21, end of 22, even into 2023. we can use all the help we can get. And we were blessed enough to have more volunteers than our current member in bylaws allows. We looked at other committees, we did a little research in the bylaws, and we found that some committees have been allowed to have a range instead of a specific number. So I'd like to make a motion that we update or amend the bylaws to reflect that the programming committee 8 members language be changed to membership to be made up of a range from 8 to 12 members.
That would require a special election of the full membership, a special vote. The bylaws can only be changed by the body of the participating members, not by the board.
Can we do that electronically instead of having to wait till next June?
Yep.
Well, the option is to do a special election or a special vote, which has happened in the past.
So you mean a special vote of everyone, not an election, right? To be clear, a vote to change the bylaws?
Yeah, but the vote goes out to all of the participating voting members of WORT.
Okay. So can we ask that be completed, please? We are not trying to change any of the other language, just to be clear. We're still going to keep the lister, sponsor, news, music, the 2 at large will be, that will be where it's increased. So the range of membership from 8 to 12. So would that come from?
Yeah, I was just outlining the procedure that needs to be followed.
Cool.
I will second that and amend that the motion be put to, be sent electronically to all eligible WORT voters in a reasonable amount of time.
Well, we would have to do it as a regular special election, and there is specific rules regarding special elections and special votes, not at the annual meeting. So it will have to follow those rules.
So I would a friendly amendment that into the motion that the bylaw change be voted on according to the rules set down in the bylaws.
Sweet.
Rosie, are you comfortable with that?
Very comfortable, yes.
Discussion. Are there any people who want to discuss this, who have questions, concerns?
I do have a question, and that was, how will the composition be expanded?
We will maintain the minimum requirements, the listener, sponsor, news, music, the music director, news and public affairs director, and 1 member of the board of directors. We do have 2 that are attending, but the requirement is 1, and we will expand the variant to the at-large section.
Okay. Yeah, because I knew there was specific makeup of that committee. I just wondered if it was going to be
Yeah, and we don't want
defined
to
as a volunteer versus non-volunteer, versus staff versus board member.
As long as we have the minimum that's currently required by the bylaws, we're just going to expand the range to the at-large section. Because there, if you look at the list, we're not going to require 2 board of directors to be seated. We already have lister sponsors. We have news represented, music represented. The music director is already on there, and so is the news and public affairs director.
Right. I guess my question is, were you going to limit those at-large seats to non-board, non-staff volunteers?
We were not.
So that you're not doubling up boards, you're not doubling up staff.
We were not discussing limiting them.
I just wonder if we should say that, they need to not be, or if that's even necessary. I don't know if any.
Tom is raising his hand, so Tom, do you have something to add to this, or maybe clarify?
Not to clarify, but to add to it, I guess.
Okay.
is it worth looking at the rest of the committees to maybe do the same sort of thing? Like I'm embarrassed to say I have no idea what the membership rules are for the engineering committee. You know, and if it's set that like, because it's usually the same 5 or 6 of us. But if we were to expand, I don't want to go, if we're going to send out a you know, vote to the general membership, we might as well do it all in one fell swoop rather than, you know, 6 months from now saying, here's another one.
I don't believe committees like engineering actually have a restriction on maximum number. It is the programming committee and the executive committee that are specifically, you know, certain staff members and board members are specifically named, and the makeup is very specific.
Okay.
And I'm asking the question because I would like to see it limited to volunteers and listener sponsors who are not board members or staff, so that the makeup remains volunteer driven or listener sponsor driven, and that we don't have any sort of tilted table in any one direction.
Rosie, just to remind you that you're still sharing your screen, so we're all seeing what you're exploring.
Yep, I'm trying to find the answer because I knew I had it in here. In here, the committee profiles say how many is on each thing, and I wanted to find it for Tom while Doug was talking. I agree with you, Doug. Just for the record.
Yeah, cool. I just thought I would throw that out there because I feel that if the care was taken to form the committee membership to such a degree and specificity, it must have been for a good reason. And I am all for expanding the committee to get more help. I just don't want to see scales tip toward too much board representation or too much staff representation, quite honestly, to really make sure that our volunteers are driving the programming. And that's coming from the community and not from us.
So Dean, would you make a friendly amendment again to say that the at-large position would be restricted to the listener, sponsor, and donor? Yeah, Doug, is that what you want?
No, and volunteers,
Volunteers.
non-board volunteers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good that that's the intent of the proposal at the beginning. It's good to clarify that and put that down.
Okay, how
So
does this
thank you
sound?
for adding that clarification.
Okay.
And as far as Tom's comment, right now, there's been no request from any other committee to add, so let's just deal with this one. And if others want to do that, maybe part of this review that we're doing, we can look at it then. But right now, we just got this one on the table.
And then just to clarify for Tom's question and Rosie's exploration here, engineering is a special committee, and there are really no membership requirements for the meeting. Basically, anybody who is interested. And the list that I have put down here is pretty large. And rarely do we see that many people at a meeting, as Tom mentions.
Yeah, but like, and other committees don't have that specific makeup in the bylaws, like programming.
Correct, I agree.
Right, so I like to Dean's question, I don't see that problem where we have to go to the membership will come up with the other committees, because there are no other committees who are specifically named people like the programming committee. And it is simply because the programming committee is, well, quite vital to the station, but it also has links to FCC and CPB with requirements for a programming committee, because we're a nonprofit non-commercial radio station. So there's legalities involved as well, that the makeup be all over, so that it isn't just a group of staff members deciding what the programming is going to be. It ensures community driven. So I think moving in this way definitely puts us on the right track to a better functioning committee, yet still holding that ethos of having the community drive it.
So Marla, you can see my screen?
I was just taking notes here. I
Yeah.
can see your screen.
So I think we're gonna have to back up and I'll make the motion again. Is that gonna screw you up in the notes? Because we'll just use the language that's actually in what's already existing.
Yes, I think it'll probably,
Go ahead.
So I think we're gonna keep the number, get rid of 8, put in the range 8 to 12. And I think we're going to have to say something like, because it says these 5 members must include at least one, but if we go with what Doug's saying, we'd have to say beyond points 1, 2, and 3 there in the membership. All other members must be a representative of at least one of the following groups. So all other members must be at least, a representative of at least one of the following groups. And it's music programmers, news volunteers and producers, and listener sponsors, because that's how the balance is written right now. So we'll just stick with that.
Okay.
So I'm making that motion. If Dina, do you still want to second it with that change?
yes, and just to clarify this, there's 2 in number 3, and the sentence right below it, we have to strike where it says the remaining 5 members, then below that is these 5 members. You have to strike that language and include the new language.
Yeah. If approved with the vote that we do electronically, yeah. Yay, team. Back to you, Dave.
I see Kai had his hand up. Was that just as an experiment, Kai?
Hey, Dave, that was just to show Susan how to do the raise hand. So I think Susan has her hand up, actually.
Go ahead, Susan.
Actually, I just wanted to know for when things got closer to the listener sponsor thing.
Okay.
I'm having trouble finding the more menu.
On the bottom of the
It may be
screen.
just 3 dots.
Call the vote here. We need to
Stand
talk.
by, Dean.
We do the vote, Dave?
Yes. I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the comments and questions have been resolved.
Okay.
Are there any more comments from the board? Thank you. So before us, we have a motion to expand the programming committee. The language is, as Marla is attempting to capture in the draft minutes document as we speak. All in favor of that motion to expand the programming committee, say aye or raise their hands.
Aye.
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 All opposed to this change, please say no or give us a thumbs down. I hear no nos. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thanks, everybody.
Now we'll wait while the secretary catches up.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. The next report that we have an issue with, an item to approve, is the Technology and Facilities Director report from Tom. And the action item he had was to approve a $435 expenditure for licenses for the Cisco Meraki router firewall devices that we have. In an email correspondence, Dean said, how come this wasn't in the budget? And it was, the last license was purchased by yours truly, David Devereux Weber, when he was serving as acting engineer. And it slipped through the cracks to put that in the budget. when Tom created the budget, and I didn't notice it until it was too late. So that's why we're doing it at this time. And Tom also explained that he's only doing a 1-year extension at this point because Tom is going to reevaluate our whole router situation. If we do the audio over IP project, which looks likely, then, and that will be a separate budget issue, and we're not at this meeting even considering that issue, but he doesn't want to make a 3-year commitment to something that might only last 1 year. So that's the purpose of this being a 1-year commitment to that license. Are there any questions?
I move we authorize the expenditure.
We don't need a motion because it's in a report. So
Second, then.
yep. All in favor, say aye, or give me a thumbs up, or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no, or give me a thumbs down. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. Tom had also put in an engineering committee minutes. There were no action items, but more discussion about the audio over IP project. And we're all trying to, in the engineering committee, trying to sort of get our brains around how much is involved with changing that. It changes essentially everything, the way we do everything at the station technologically. Instead of using twisted pair wires for analog audio or twisted pair wires for digital audio, it's all going over IP, Ethernet connections. So it's amazing, but challenging. Tom has gotten 2 different proposals at this time, and we're figuring out what other items that would have to be changed in order to make this work. So very good. In the business and events report, which is next, Doug has an action item that is please sell raffle tickets. Doug, would you like to talk about what happened with our events?
What do you mean, what happened?
How many did you sell? You sent an email, and I wanted to give you a chance to brag.
I'm not like that, Dave.
Okay.
We did really well at McPike. I am going to be at Willie Co-op North both this Saturday and next Saturday, selling tickets at a little table and handing out Wartstock flyers. Anybody who wants a pack of 30 tickets to purchase and or sell to friends and relatives, we are eligible to enter because it's not our raffle, except for you, Dean. But thanks to those who have picked up raffle packs. Email me if you want one.
Adrian is doing a wonderful job of coordinating tabling. If you want help, let Adrian know, and she'll see if there's any people who want to help.
I'm not tapping Adrian because she's already going to be at Eakin Park that day.
Okay.
So we've discussed this, Dave, and I'm good.
Good for you. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Dave, can I
Rosie, go.
comment? Today in the finance committee, because he's not like that and doesn't brag, I'm going to do it just for a second for him. Mary Joy made a point to point out to all of us how quickly we're increasing underwriting. I know that's not about raffle tickets, but that is about Doug, and we were all small round of applause for Doug right today, and I think the board should hear that as well.
Hey, Doug.
Hey.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks a lot, Rosie. Yeah, they've just been coming out of the woodwork, and it's very exciting. I've done some reaching out and just amazed because I was really worried with, COVID and businesses struggling. It's amazing, and especially the event-based underwriting's really been taking off. So I'm very pleased.
That's wonderful. All right. The listener-sponsored development report from Susan. Susan has an action item that she would like to ask the board to require staff, committees, and work groups to prepare detailed 2022 development plans to submit by the November board meeting. Rosie has brought up the listener-sponsored development director report. So comments, questions, discussion, please proceed.
When I came here, I was told that we had to submit a development report every year. I think it was to the personnel committee. You were supposed to present it to them when you came in for your evaluation. So even though, you know, you guys have a lot on your plate and we didn't always get to a yearly evaluation of things, I stuck with preparing that report, which in my case, because there's so many income streams and strategies for all those various income streams, mine tends to run 15 pages as a report. Yeah, Shali, it is a 1-year plan full of goals. At other places that I've been at, they call them development plans, whether it's for the fundraising department or any department. It is, what do you plan to do to develop your department beyond what's being done right now? How do you intend to make it better in the next year? So for fundraising, it usually comes to how are you going to raise more money, but also how are you going to better service donors or questions like that. And I find it really helpful. And I also find that it helps you set goals. It helps, for mine are all strategies and stuff. So I am happy to turn, I've got the 2021 copy that I've been updating, and I've started the 2022 development plan. It doesn't have to be anything like mine, but I really think those are the kind of things that help us move beyond what we're doing and move toward doing something else, or thinking about what else we could be doing.
Yeah, as the other fundraiser, I've submitted one every year as well.
It's Dave.
Dean, go ahead.
This is Dean. Yeah, that I think this fits in well with our operational review that we require all reports be due, and I think Susan's request was that they be by November here. An operational review would certainly include development plans for the next year. And I think an operational review is almost exactly what we're suggesting be done every year. So I think that obviously we can, if we're going to do this operational review, it would certainly need full reports from each department. So this fits in, I think, I don't think I want to do two things. Can we combine these into one, I guess, is what I'd like.
I agree, Dean. I totally see the dovetail here, as you do, that these are both like, this will definitely serve that operational review, because you'll know from each staff department and each committee then what they're working on and what their goals are in the short term, and that can help develop long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I made the suggestion that and it might be that the board fine tunes exactly what they want. I find often that, I'm not talking about yours, Doug, because I haven't seen it, but often strategies are missing. So if I put in for fundraising that I'm going to raise this much money from direct mail, I have a list of what direct mails I'll be sending in the next year, and what exactly is the strategy for each of those direct mails to bring in the amount of money that I say they're going to bring in.
And I don't go into that level of detail.
And that's what I use. The November date was important because I've always done these development plans at other places tied to the budget. So if we plan to have a budget to the board by November for approval, how am I generating my numbers for next year? How am I generating my expenses for next year? All of those things are part of this big development plan that I have for my department. So I agree that it's part of the overall picture. I'm just saying, as programming is asking for stuff, as Adrian wants stuff for the volunteer department, as all of us are asking for money or listing our expenses or listing what we're going to bring in, that's where I find it really helpful to have these development plans, which are useful all year round, but especially when you're trying to pull a budget together that is realistic.
Yeah.
I want to comment that this is still a rather nebulous request. It doesn't include a committee or entity who would be asking for this and what would be done with those reports when they are received. So we need to figure out a little bit more about how we're going to use this. Otherwise, it may not fulfill a purpose.
Perhaps we could do it something like this, David. This is Dean again.
Yep.
That we could put a deadline on this operational review that we're asking to do, and have them include a detailed 2022 development plan in that review, so that as Doug suggested, that these two dovetail together, and so have a more comprehensive report, review of what you're doing, how your system works, and then what's your plan for the 2022. But we do put a deadline on it. November meeting.
Marla can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the operational review, I think that we're all talking about, is what came from the executive committee, and that is something that we have not asked anyone to produce that. That is what we were saying we were working on. So to be clear, there was no request that I'm aware of. Marla, am I wrong?
No, you are not.
Okay, so we have not asked the staff to do that work. That was our report on the work we are doing. My concern with the request, I love the idea, just for the record, of having some sort of development plan, but I think we need to have some sort of a template so that everyone's information that's coming in is a reasonable amount. Everybody's got their hands full doing their day-to-day operations. I'm hesitating as a board member to ask for a huge, development plan from every single staff, committee, work group. I think that different positions call for different things. And I don't want this to become an overwhelming, cumbersome thing that everybody's worried about for the next 90 days, because November's right around the corner. That's my concern. So Susan, do you happen to have like some sort of a template or something that?
Mine is really similar year to year. Okay. Except I start out with the goals of my, the goals that I have, pick a top 5 goals for my department for the next year. I have a list of what I see as the major challenges to those goals that I go through. And then I break down income streams into how much I project that I'm going to be making during the next year. And as I said, then it breaks down into like direct mail. How many letters am I sending? What do I expect to get from those? And then it breaks down into what is the strategy of how that letter, like, am I going to have to send it to 3,200 donors to get that? And then the expenses are in there. So I don't see other departments being quite like that, because I don't know how many income streams I have. I have to stop to count them all the time. So, my report's just long because there's just so freaking many of them.
Well, and I think that level of detail in other reports may just make eyes glaze over and people aren't even going to follow them anyway. I'd much rather see something a little more concise than that. I don't think every single strategy needs to be laid out in a report, because I think that's too cumbersome and nobody's going to get what you're trying to say.
Marla has her hand raised, so I want to ask Marla to respond to her question first.
Oh, you know what? Thank you, Dave, but I'd like to hear Doug and then I'll have a question. Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
go ahead, Doug.
No, that was all I had to say, is that, you know, consider the number of people who are reading the reports and what they're used for, and how much that level of detail really serves everything. I see more concise reports being.
Am I showing my hand raised? I tried.
Nope.
I tried
Nope.
Control Y. I can't find the hand raise thing, anything on my screen.
It's Alt Y. Alt Y.
Oh, Alt. Let me try that. Now is my hand raised?
There you go.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it is.
I can't see it. Okay. No, I agree, Doug, but I think the important thing is if you're looking at your figures for what, for instance, you brought in last year, let's stick with fundraising. So if I am putting in a figure for how much the monthly donors are going to bring in next year, I have my figure from last year in there. And if I'm varying from that figure by more than 10%, I think it deserves an explanation. If, and this is, I'm not trying to pick on anyone, but let's say, because I don't know any of this, let's say one of the things for the music director is that all of the program host, music host will have their spinatrons completed within 12 hours of the show, right? If you've got your figures for last year of how many got that done, and you say you're going to raise that by 40% this year, it needs a strategy of how that's going to happen. You can't just say it's going to happen.
All right, thank you, Susan. Marla?
Yeah, so I have a question. Susan, how much, and you know I'm supportive of these kinds of tools to help plan and keep projects on track. It's almost like a project management tool that has some budgetary stuff in it, and I see where you're coming from. Have you talked to the rest of the staff about it and how they're feeling?
Let me unmute. There, I'm unmuted. I brought it up in previous years. Once the personnel committee stopped requiring them, and Doug, I don't know if you and I are do you submit yours to the board as well?
I submitted mine. Yeah, it goes with my board report. My last one is
in December. Do you do it?
I think it was December. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do it for the coming year based on the budget figures that were approved by the board.
So I have not seen, after reading through people's board reports well, I usually read them pretty much every month from the staff. I've never seen a development plan from anyone but Doug and I think maybe the title development plan instead of whatever the personnel committee called it. I don't remember what it was called that we had to bring to our personnel committee meeting when we went over the results of our evaluation.
I thought it was more a strategic plan.
Yeah, it was called something different. I'm just used to calling them development reports.
We're getting off into the weeds in terms of this discussion. I don't think this is a proposal that's ready to approve. So
what do you need for it to be something that you can approve? You want me to specify that a committee's set up, that people submit their ideas to them about what the report, I really think that this is partly a supervisory tool. So I expect more input from the board, but I can certainly, put what I would like in a.
I would like to refer the question to the executive committee with the operational review that they're doing right now, and have them work that into what they're already doing in terms of the strategic planning. Strategic planning. Because I think it's a good idea, but it needs to be focused and more specific, and needs to take into account other staff feelings about it. So,
okay, I just hope that it has some budgetary ability to do something with the budget. So, if it's going to be that we're not going to do it until there won't be a plan until next July or something, then I still feel like we're going a little bit into the budget blind, but that's not my decision.
We, the executive committee needs to review how the budget gets developed and how the backup for each department's estimates. So I think it goes directly into that. So I would like to have the executive committee work on that. So if there's no objection, I will consider that a referral to the executive committee, and a motion or a vote is not needed. Any concerns? Anybody disagree with me?
I'm fine with it. I think that's a great idea, Dave.
All right, thank you. Thank you for putting the item in your staff report and for continuing to press to do more in terms of reporting and development. So thank you. We have a music director report. I didn't see any action items in there, and I didn't see any action items in the News, Talk, and Public Affairs board report.
Excuse me, I thought Rosie brought something up that she wanted to discuss about the News, Talk, and Public Affairs report related to a, oh, what was it related to? Gosh.
It was related to an incident while Shelley and Dylan were reporting on the scene.
That's thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Tina. Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Rosie. When I talked to Shelley, talked to me before she submitted this staff report, and it is my opinion that that Shelley was reporting as part of her job as news director of WORT, and therefore WORT is obliged to support her in her actions here. Shelley preferred to retain her own attorney, and since Shelley is on the call, can I ask you to speak to this, Shelley? Did you want to say how you came to your conclusion, and if there's a way that WORT can support you better?
Sure. First, does anyone need any background on the facts of the situation?
A short summary.
The WORT News Department was a regular presence at the Black Lives Matter protests, whatever you'd like to call them, last summer. I did not send reporters to many evening protests because I was concerned for their safety after certain things happened to me or almost happened to me. So this is one of those nights where I purposefully didn't send out any reporters. You know, it's not really work that can be done by a reporter once a week who's reporting once a week and maybe isn't familiar. Like, I was out every night and I can read the situation. So that was my concern there. But I was a regular protester presence. And so that night was when Senator Tim Carpenter was beaten up by 6 to 8. Someone muted me.
That was my mistake. I'm sorry. I was trying to reduce.
Going on for too long. Assaulted State Senator Tim Carpenter at like 2 in the morning. And I had been running the boards all day. I was very tired, whatever. That was distressing. No bones about it. Like, I usually try to take a different perspective during the protest than like the State Journal, broken windows, etc., and like really listen to what people were saying. But yeah, that was distressing. So we got a lot of traction for it. I had my phone with me. I had been threatened earlier in the night, so I didn't have my recorder with me, but I was there getting audio. as a journalist. The Cap Times had stopped sending any of the reporters. Dylan was there as my like buddy from Isthmus and also there to report on it. So I linked to my reporting. Keep in mind I was very tired, so if there's anything. But I did talk to the police after because that was brutal. And like I started crying after, you know. It was just not, yeah. So we were the only 2 journalists there. There was one later who caught Carpenter falling into the bushes. So I did give the police my report. I don't think I have a lot to say other than the, or had a lot to tell them other than the eyewitness account of like, there were like 8 people on top of him, pummeling him, right? And the protesters had repeatedly said no photos and no recording, no phones out. If you have your phone out, like we're gonna surround you, either steal your phone or like do something. Like it was not pretty. So, you know, I gave that background to the cops. I did give them the recording because it's public knowledge, right? I'm not there to take a side. And I thought that was all cleared up. Dylan got a subpoena ahead of me because 2 women are being charged, and they didn't take a plea deal that was super lenient, which tells me that the DA has like nothing, and it is now subpoenaing journalists. So Dylan got one and I got one. And I guess the reason I retained a lawyer is because the guy who, the ADA, the assistant district attorney who served me, is notorious for being a jerk. He didn't serve me properly. And I don't want to be used as a pawn. Like I can't identify these 2 women. Like I told everything I have to the cops, and really everything I have is in my reporting. So I feel like a pawn. And I also spent a considerable amount of time trying to build up trust in a community that like did not trust you and told you to leave, right? So I feel like I earned that, and I don't really want to, a year later, be testifying against people who may or may not have attacked him. I don't know. I can't identify them. There's a bush in the way. So it's more a moral thing. Like there's a shield law that they're not following, right? Where you can't compel reporters to testify, by the way, unless you have to have a very hard threshold, and you have to have a hearing with the judge to determine if you can even use that admissible, if that's admissible. So this ADA has repeatedly not followed the law. Dylan talked to him and he's like, well, I've never heard of the shield law. And it's like, yes, you have. You've been in there since the 80s. And when I talked to James Friedman, who's my lawyer, he was like, yeah, he's playing games, whatever. I just don't want to be dragged into this. So that's why I retained a lawyer. I don't know that it's necessarily I don't think WORT should have to pay. What I would like to do with it is have your permission and Susan's permission to fundraise off of it. So tweet, I'm being subpoenaed. Here's why I don't think it's a good idea for them to subpoena me. And, you know, I've retained a lawyer and ask my lawyer if that's okay. But I feel like that could generate some income and use that income to first pay the lawyer fees, and then whatever else is left over, I will donate to WORT. So that's my strategy. Maybe it'll raise no money. I have no idea. So that was my idea, but all he's doing is writing a letter to the ADA saying, this is, you know better. And hopefully it's just too much for them to fight to, you know, I feel like it's different if I say it versus if the lawyer says it, it knows this guy with the reputation. So that's the background. It's $585 for 1 hour of his time, but he's having his associate do it, and it's probably not going to take an hour, so it's probably less, and I don't mind. So yeah, thanks for indulging me.
Thank you. Rosie, did you want to ask a question?
No, I think that was a great summary, and I'm so sorry.
Hey, I get to check a thing off my adult
Yep.
checklist.
So the only thing that I am going to ask the board to consider, and Shelley, honestly, I don't know if we can allow this for fundraising or not. This is above everyone in this room's pay grade as far as I'm concerned. I think that we get what, Dave, 4 hours free with our pro bono attorney?
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to use a little bit of that time. And if Shelley's willing to talk with our attorney, let's get them both on the same page so that if there's something more, I appreciate your generosity that you're facing this yourself. I don't think that that should necessarily be necessary. So if we could, and I don't want to drive your attorney bill up. So I'm not going to ask your attorney to talk to our attorney and then your bill's going to go over $585. But if you'd be willing with Dave to just take half an hour of our pro bono attorney, fill him in on what's going on. There's so many ramifications here. It was for Ward, it was on Ward time. And if they don't choose to drop it off of one letter, your bill could get huge. And I'd like to be proactive rather than reactive, not just for Ward, but for you. And then while we're at it, since she brought it up, let's ask if there's any harm in fundraising, not fundraising, but you know what I mean, crowdfunding or whatever we're going to do.
Yeah.
I also am wondering if, I mean, just from a journalist point of view, this is awfully cool news too, what you're going through, if you're feeling comfortable. And is there anything going to hurt Shelley, David? Let's just ask the attorney if we pursue this, you know, is there something that we can do to help back this up? Because I have some kids that were involved in this all too. And I'm telling you, when I thought they were going to go away, when I thought that ADA was going to drop it, they did not. And it's been getting messier and messier and messier. So I think that we need to be proactive for both our team member here and Wart. So
Dave?
I'm asking the board to discuss having Dave, if that's okay, and Shelley, if that's okay, to meet with our attorney, use up one of those pro bono 4 hours and just see where we all stand. That's what it's there for.
Thanks. Stand by, Dean.
Dave?
Stand by, Dean.
Yeah.
One of the comments that I have is that we can't use it on air. We can't fundraise on air for somebody else.
No.
Right.
So,
That's not what I plan to do. All through Twitter, essentially, and through my own Twitter. And
right.
I feel somewhat okay about that. So there's that. I do know lawyers who are friends or volunteers and who are happy to talk about this. I talked with a couple and they said, yeah, you should hire someone who knows this person. And so James, I got him through the legal hotline, by the way, but he just happened to be the same person Dylan talked to for advice. And he just happens to be a media lawyer who literally wrote the media guide about the Shield law and knows Paul Humphrey and all of that. So that's why I wanted his expertise in that. I'm happy to meet with the lawyer. I think the next step is he now has to have a hearing. So that would probably be the next step when I would want a lawyer. And I would gladly use your attorney for that.
The legal hotline that Shelley mentions is the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association legal hotline. Dean, you had a question.
Yeah, well, from everything we just heard in the report I read, she was on the job when this all happened. And I don't see why we shouldn't reimburse her legal fees and for using an attorney very familiar with this process who will be able to probably put a short time in it, at least initially. If it goes further than that, then we could readjust. But Shelley, I appreciate everything you said here, but I don't see why you have to pay for this when you were on the job working for the station. And everything I've heard, I think we should cover the costs. And I'm okay with her using an outside lawyer.
Thank you. Susan, I saw a hand flash and then disappear. Did you have a question? I guess not. Oh, there you go.
No,
Okay.
no, I didn't try and, I don't know why a hand flashed. No
That's okay.
explanation.
Could be my eyes. Thank you. Marla, I see a hand from you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I agree with Dean that this was done on the job and that this is an expense of WRT's, not Shelley's.
I'm sorry, news costs so much.
Yeah,
Well,
you are.
You don't have anything to apologize for.
No.
yeah,
So I guess, I
But
would, now we don't have to vote, I mean, we should discuss this, but I would move that we reimburse Shelley for her initial legal fees.
I think that I want to make one thing a little clearer than I did the first time. The reason I'm asking for us to also talk to our attorney is we are currently in civil suits, and this could result in civil suits, not just for Shelley, but for us. I mean, if we think this through, whether she testifies or not, we have people that are being accused. We have, the senator that got beat up. There's a lot of room here for a lot of attorneys to be doing a lot of work. So I think that I want to keep the two attorneys separate, and I agree that we should be helping, not just helping, but doing the attorney that Shelley picked for Shelley. But I think we also, as a station, need to consult with our attorney about how this impacts WORT, or could potentially, or at the very least, just apprise that person of the situation in case something comes down the pike.
Yes.
So the attorney that was retained for us is Christopher Wolski from Men Law in Appleton, Wisconsin. He's being paid for by Cincinnati Insurance based on that lawsuit, and now two lawsuits. Well, one lawsuit for which we've been served and one lawsuit for which we have not yet been served. I will talk with Christopher Wolski tomorrow about this and just let him know that this is happening, and see if he thinks that there might be an impact on the lawsuit. And
Yeah,
And Shelley, I don't want us to have a motion yet, because if I was your attorney, there may be a difference to me in my strategy between this young reporter having to cover my fees is an argument, as opposed to big old WORT is backing you up. We may want to structure this a little differently in light of what, so I want you to get your attorney's point of view on us reimbursing or paying. Can you imagine if we got the bills? It could work against your attorney's strategy. So let's make sure before we do a motion, Dean, that Shelley has a chance to talk to her attorney about the best way to handle this, if that's okay.
I did let him know that I can pay up to an hour, right?
Right.
And so anything beyond that, he will need to check with me.
Right. And so you
Probably
might want to mention that there may be funding available from WORT, but you want to know how that might impact it. And you can deal with that when you're done with your hour or whatever.
I mean, I know what I will let him know. The next step is really just compel that hearing to happen, to serve me properly, because I can just ignore this technically and I can't be held in contempt,
right?
Because they didn't do it correctly. And then the second would be just have that hearing with the judge, at which point, I mean, what a stretch if the judge allows it. So I just wanted to let you know, because you have an ongoing legal issue, and they're just two different. But I mean, the worst thing that could happen to me is I'm held in contempt if I refuse to testify on the stand, and all this is moot, which I just go to the Dane County Jail and do it straight from there.
Yep.
So, and if I end up testifying and I have to testify, at least I can say, look, I tried to not testify. And I also, the only thing I foresee trying to fundraise off of this is backlash from people who are like, why don't you want to help out this gay Milwaukee state senator after he got his brains beat up? And I hear that, but if you don't have a solid case, you don't have a solid case. I shouldn't be the linchpin. So
Right. If
Thank
you're, Charlie, you're cool with us holding on any support in the meantime, and just want to keep it and then inform us later on if it gets more complicated.
I will keep you up to date. I can send you the subpoena. I just wanted to talk about it beforehand.
I don't think we need that. I just want to make sure you're comfortable with going forward.
Yeah.
In our discussion here, we'll hold off. I'll withdraw the motion if you're cool with going forward, but if it gets more and more complicated, then as far as I'm concerned, you're our employee and we need to step up.
Agree.
Hey, does anybody know if we've got coverage in our insurance policy for this sort of thing?
Oh, I've read it once.
Because we do have pretty extensive insurance coverage for the station. I don't know if it includes, because we do have reporters, there may very well be a rider. We have to look into this.
We're covered by things like defamation. If someone were to sue us over slander, I don't think, because this is optional, right? Usually when you're subpoenaed, you just show up, whatever.
Yeah.
This is, and like you're opting in to like, no, I'm not doing this as a point of like journalistic ethics. So probably not, which is also why I'm like, you know, this is like my reputation versus like you being compelled, you know, so.
Not
Well,
compelled, but we are supportive, Charlie. I'm sorry, but we're all behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from what I hear, your lawyer advised you that you were improperly served. But I don't think that means you can just ignore it. I think you're right that the attorney has to challenge it back to them, and then the DA has to decide if he's going to go back to court to subpoena you again.
So I see two hands up after Dean.
Yeah, I'm done. So I'll withdraw the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marla, you have your hand up still?
Nope.
Okay. Tom, you have your hand up.
Right. Basically, I just wanted to say, yeah, we do have $1 million umbrella policy with our insurance that might cover this. Because it's an umbrella policy. It's supposed to cover all sorts of things that were not expected. So I can check on that with Hub Insurance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm guessing the deductible is going to be higher than the $575.
Right, but if it gets worse than that, then
Right.
we might have this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to mess with our insurance going up. Like, we already have to deal with it.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about what's going to happen with the Cincinnati suit if there will be fallout later. So, but
Question for Rosie. Because of your legal background, Rosie, in the notes, should we put in there that that Charlie will speak to her attorney about possible WORT reimbursement and how
I would put nothing in the notes except that we discussed it and heard her out.
Okay, thank you.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We don't want her to have deal with anything official later.
That's what I thought. Okay, thanks.
Lesson learned. Don't talk to cops. That's my lesson.
Yeah, that's one of, yeah.
That caused problems the day of our unfortunate incident. So it goes both ways. There will be a recording of this meeting. So thank you. I think that finishes the News Talk and Public Affairs report. We're moving on to the Volunteer and Outreach report. Adrian asked for approval for bumper stickers in the amount of $2,501.54. Are there any discussions? Rosie has wonderfully brought up that design of the bumper stickers. Any questions, concerns, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the money for the bumper stickers, say aye or raise their hands.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no or show me a thumbs down. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, that item is approved. I made a mistake in linking the DEI report, but it was out in the drive. Rosie, could you go out on the drive and see if you can find the DEI report for me?
Well, I think this one was wrongly too, so I'm trying to quick fix it.
Oh, okay.
I ended up in engineering when I tried to use the.
Oh, well, that
You.
just goes to show you shouldn't do this when you're tired. So,
Oh heck, it'll just take me a minute. Hang on.
yep.
So let's go here.
I think the DEI report is correctly linked. I mean, last time
The
I just
volunteer outreach one that's not.
it was the volunteer and outreach one that wasn't.
Apply. And now I got the DEI coming up. Ta-da!
Should be right.
Yeah, that looks good.
That's it.
Elliot, did you want to comment on it?
Yeah, so we took a look at the, sorry, my dog is, okay. We took a look at the PT to full-time job proposal, and also took a look at the WORT staff statement as a work group, and yeah, basically came to the understanding that, you know, the job position has been specifically tailored for Erin's strengths and qualifications, and knowing that there's overwhelming percentage of staff that are in support of Erin being hired. We don't take a position on Erin's hire, but we know that we understand that this hire was a one-time exception for our open hire policy, and so our request was to recommend that WORT not adopt any policy that allows for full-time staff without an open hire. And so DI has some plans to eventually team up with the policy and bylaws group and just kind of go through, as they're going through the documents, just sit in on that with them. And yeah, that's what I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Elliot.
Thank you.
That is all the old business on the agenda. I have no new business listed at this time. And there is nothing to go through in closed session.
You
Yes.
asked me to bring up the volunteering stuff in new business. Do you want to just do that next month since we had so much? I don't care one way or the other.
Why don't we bring it up now? And if we decide to table it, we table it, but bring it up at least.
So there's been an ongoing kind of informal discussion about the board participating in activities like the fests and all of that stuff. And Dave and I were chatting, and he thought it might be a good idea that we actually just reach out to the board, and instead of everybody doing their own thing, what does the board feel about board representation out in our community at our fests and all of that? If we could have a quick chat, that would be great, because I honestly don't, I mean, I know what I think, but that doesn't mean everybody does. Is it silly? Does it help? Does it impact anything at all to have a board member, at least one, showing up in support of our volunteers at, the weekend activities? Or is that, to most board members, do you think that's just extra?
I see Marla has her hand raised. Go ahead, Marla.
Yeah, and I think I addressed this in an email a couple of weeks ago. When I came onto the board, I was told that I was expected to volunteer about, I think it was 8 to 10 hours a month. And my assumption is that that's outside of going to board meetings. So that includes, participating, I would assume, on committees and things like that. So I feel like we're told that we have a responsibility to provide that volunteer time. And I think this is a wonderful way to do it. I don't know if other board members volunteer in different ways, but I really do like doing this to support not only the volunteers, but the staff who are coordinating all of this. and to get out there and see what we're doing in terms of outreach, and how could we help strategize where we're going if we don't know. Again, it's kind of where are we? So I really think it's valuable that we're there. So whether or
Thank
not
you.
we force somebody to, or we have a plan to do it, or a calendar, I don't know, but I think it's valuable.
So as a person here who's new, but also does volunteer in different ways, like as in production of programming, I do like the idea of it, but sometimes some of these events are really just far for me as a person who only recently got their license, and also typically bicycles everywhere. Sometimes, like going to Ecken Park or like Warner Park is really far for me. So like if there are options that are closer to me, I like those options, but sometimes like if it's monthly and you only have an event that's going to be at a very far place and it costs me money to get there because I have to pay for all the cabs, I have to pay for, that kind of stuff. It does become more challenging, especially like in the winter when I can't buy, like I already start, I think when you say like requirement and then like you hear like winter event, I'm like, oh, this is already going through my mind. Like, well, how am I going to get to that event? That's going to be cost challenging. I don't know.
I
think
have
as an option.
Stand by, Dean, just a second. I have made this offer to Alita in the past, and I think other board members. I would be happy to drive people to events to facilitate this. My mobility has been more challenged lately because of a knee problem, so I haven't been able to stand for long periods. So that's why I haven't been doing that. But I can drive as long as I don't have to stand. So I'd be happy to help you out there, Kai. In terms of Rosie's primary question of how do other board members feel, I think that it is really beneficial to the station, to the staff members, to the volunteers to see board members out in public supporting events. Just our presence there means that we've taken that extra effort to meet them where they are, and that results in a stronger commitment when they're fundraising. And so our pledge drives work better when our board supports our staff and our events, and our on-air fundraising works better because the people who are pledge wrapping and the hosts know that the whole organization is behind them. And it since I started 3.5 years ago, or however long it's been, it has been very beneficial when board members do that. So I strongly support it, and we'll do it in my limited fashion. We'll support people who want to do this by giving them rides or talking it up or whatever. And when my mobility improves, I will be out there too. So thank you. Rosie, if you want to talk about, well, let me say something else, and that is we have an internal WORT calendar, and Susan and I and Tom have been working on making sure that everybody can see all the events, and I think we're making great progress there. If you as a board member can't see the WORT internal calendar, talk to me offline, not at this meeting, but talk to me, send an email to me, and I'll work through showing that WORT internal calendar, which Rosie is, boy, it's like
I get to be Vanna.
Vanna White here. Now, what I'd like you to do now is chroma key yourself into the screen so you can, you can hold your hand out to the side and say, and here's the WORT calendar.
Be the weather person.
That's right. Storms coming in here, but WORT events are doing great.
I just want to be clear, I was not at all insinuating that I'm for making this mandatory or a policy. I just wanted a discussion to see if I was nuts that I thought it was helpful.
No, not at all. No, it's tangible. It makes a difference. It makes Susan's job easier. It makes Doug's job easier, and it improves our income. Susan has, for several years, pointed out that the listener sponsor base is getting older, and we're not replacing those listener sponsors with younger people. So part of the task of the strategic planning and the executive committee's work is to figure out ways to do that. But the board participating in events, the events are ways that we get out into the public. And so people who don't know about WORT, they're not listening on their radio, in some cases because they don't have radios, but they don't know to listen to WORT. So we can't reach out on the radio. So we have to reach out other than on the radio. And so going to festivals and events is one way of doing that. The tabling that we have, the tabling that Doug is going to do at the Willie Street Co-op on in the Warner Park area to promote is really a good thing. And Shalley's work and the news is what. So I have a regular Google search that reports to me every day, every time that WORT gets mentioned. So when news stories go out and WORT covers events, when people do Google searches for whatever, solar energy or a protest at State Street or whatever, they'll find out that WORT covered that. And that's one way of getting our name out there and making people aware that we exist and bringing people in. And that's part of our challenge, is to how to bring in people who don't listen to us on the radio. So we do other forms like stories on our website and social media. So a long-winded way of saying that WORT board members showing up at events is a help.
Can I point something out?
Yes.
Thanks. So yes, totally in support of board members coming to events. I do just want to point out that if you plan on tabling an event, or if you plan on like helping Adrienne, she has a whole framework for slotting people into slots, and it might kind of throw her off if a board member like shows up and just like, I'm here. So I would definitely communicate with Adrienne or Doug or whoever that you plan to go there, so she knows, because she is very active with soliciting volunteers to staff tables and do stuff like that. So make sure that she knows, or whoever is in charge of that event knows. It's not that you can't come, like definitely, yes, that's great. But I think she would want to know what's going on.
Very much so, very much
yeah.
so. Thank you for making that clear, because I sort of took that for granted, but you are correct. I shouldn't take that for granted. Communicate with Adrienne. Adrienne's a wonderful person to talk to. She's high energy. We are lucky to have her. We have an amazing set of people working on our staff right now who dedicate so much time and so much effort and energy to the station. And Adrienne is one of those, and she's just been working really hard. So I'm working with Adrienne on some questions about email lists and how we send things out. So there's lots to go, but please talk with Adrienne if you want to go to an event. She can tell you where you're needed, and you can actually cover things like tabling or whatever. So
Dave,
I would just add to that Wortstock on September 12th is kind of an all hands on deck event. We have significant needs for volunteers at Wortstock. Generally, there's 100 volunteer shifts, and we just worked out with Bob Queen a strategy so that we can sell Grand Session raffle tickets at Wortstock. It's fantastic news for our fundraising, but it also means that we're going to need even more volunteers than we thought. So definitely there's shifts available, and contact Adrienne if you want to help out at Wortstock. I will also say that all the bands are locked in now. I have all the contracts back except for one of them. So if you haven't heard, our lineup is the Angela Puerta Band, followed by the Lower Fifth, followed by Adem Tesfaye, followed by Don't Mess with Cupid, and our headliner, John Langford from the Mekons, with special guest Sally Timms.
Dave, let me get in, please.
go ahead.
Okay, Well, Kai, any board member that sits on the board of WRT represents WRT every chance we get. And if Kai or any other board member is gonna have difficulty getting to an event, I think we should just reimburse their cab fare if they want to do that. Now, being a board member, you're the face of WRT, and I wouldn't say, I would be much stronger than to say it's just a good idea to represent. It's an expectation. That's why we ran for this board, the water board, is so that we can help promote it. And I also ran into a little a violation of some of the guidelines there Friday. And to give you an example of where I'm coming from in these things, at these sessions, when every night they sponsor a different organizations. There was the Urban League, the Immigration Law Office, and we were Friday. And every group had a board member get up on stage and promote their program, except Friday we didn't. And I was kind of surprised that we didn't. And I got a little overly heated about it. And I asked Doug there, how come, isn't someone from WORT going up there to talk about WORT? And Doug, I was not yelling. I think I came on a little too strong, and I didn't mean to accuse anyone, but this was a board responsibility. We should have had someone up there in front of thousands of people promoting WORT. And I don't want anyone to think that I wanted to do it. We should have someone young up there doing it and talking about what we do. They can talk about the app, talking about we're live streaming this guy's show. It's going to be archived. All these wonderful things that WORT does, and all the tickets for all the money for the tickets that are being sold, going to go to WORT to support our work. So thank you. That's always been done, and we can do it this year.
So I'm not opposed to showing up at events. Obviously, I've been to.
No, I didn't want to single you out.
Obviously, I know. I just want to mention to everyone here that maybe you don't think about transportation as a cost anymore because you have cars. But as a person that doesn't have a car, and when you have to go rent a car, when you have to take a taxi, when you have to go, like it becomes a hassle to think about how you get to events. And if I have to start going to like all of them per month, and you have to feel like, oh, am I like going with this person? Am I asking them too much? Am I burdening them because I'm asking all the time because I'm unable to transport myself? Like, I just want everyone to understand, like, these are the like hidden costs, like socially and financially, to transportation. That's why I have to be very smart about, okay, where am I going? Like a lot of events I go to are central, right? Like, I don't make my way over to like West Side or East Side as often, or North Side, Madison, as often, because those reasons, right? So I had to be like, I don't know, I just think about those things immediately when I'm like where I'm going to be, like transportation mobility wise. So
Well,
I'm like, every now and then I can get rides. I will go to events, but I do want to be mindful if we're asking somebody to do that we have those, personal limitations in mind.
So
Kai, that's a really important issue to talk about. Rosie and I have been talking about that. I don't want to step on Dean finishing up, and then Susan has a question. So, but it's really important to not only to you, Kai, but if we want to have a representative board, there are people who don't have the time and who don't have the money to dedicate to this board of directors, and that affects our equity and diversity for that reason, and it's a huge problem. Go ahead, Dean.
Well, Kai, I didn't mean to. Again, I might have misspoke here by singling you out. And same thing, Doug, Friday night, I was not accusing. I think that was a board responsibility, and we dropped the ball on it. Someone from the board should have been up there and to hump the hell out of WORT. And to give you a better example of why we can reimburse transportation. When 7-8 years ago, when I was on the board, we had a low-income person who had a disability who couldn't drive. We paid for taxi cabs to get her to the meetings and home. Sometimes I gave him a ride and home, but and that's a legitimate expense that we can allow to help our board members who've taken time to run the face of the board to come and and participate so we can eliminate any barriers, and no one should feel that they can't participate because it can't be a burden to them. We'll help them get there. So that should be fully an expectation that if you have a problem getting there, we'll get you there if you want to volunteer. But again, I got a little bit too involved in it Friday, and Doug, like I said, I didn't mean to sound like I was accusing you, but board, we have to step up on these types of things. We missed an opportunity there to promote the station, which is what we're supposed to do. So we have to.
But it was also I'm sorry, Dean, but it was an opportunity that we didn't know existed. And really, as a member of both boards, you're the person who knew that opportunity existed and could have brought it to this board in July.
I forgot.
And being that you didn't, I think we need to see this as an opportunity going forward, that next year we can make contact with Bob Queen earlier, and we can make sure that this is something that does happen. I think it's an opportunity to do better next year. And I think that's really all that needs to be said about it.
You got it.
Thanks. I see a hand from Susan Sheldon. Susan?
I'm just trying, okay, I'm unmuted. One procedural question, and then I want to ask another question after that. Do you guys get all of the vol announce things that come from Adrian asking for participation in the events?
We
Yes.
do. That's what started this conversation.
Okay. We have volunteers all over the place. I mean, for Wartstock, they're going to be coming from all different places, even out of town. And if you want to sign up for a time, I think that it would not be that difficult. I mean, Steve McCarthy's volunteered to pick me up for a bunch of different things to drive by my house. And Kai, just to tell you, I didn't get a car till I was 45. So I totally understand what you're talking about. But I think that instead of just going through and reimbursing people for different rides, sure, when we have no other alternative, that is, I believe, a great expense. But when we have alternatives of other people that are going to be going to that event who you could ride with, that to me is the best solution of, you get a chance to talk to a volunteer, it's just a great thing. And I would like to see us go in that direction of Adrian and volunteers working together to make, so we're not using 20 vehicles to go somewhere, and we can cut down on that. That's all.
I like that. My immediate response to hearing that though was just like, oh my God, this is going to cost me so much. Like that's what went through my head at first, but now after hearing everyone being so open to being like, yeah, we can just give you a ride, it's like, I don't know. I guess I didn't think about that possibility. I just immediately thought, oh God, this is going to cost me so much money. So yeah, I'm glad that we talked through this, and I realized no, it won't cost me. So yeah, I'm glad we all got that figured out. So yeah, I will get a ride with Rosie here, and maybe we can coordinate rides with some other people, and maybe I can come to some events that are like closer in location, so that I don't want to always get a ride. I still, there's like some personal pride in that. I know I shouldn't have that, but I do feel that way a little bit. But yeah, we'll figure it out. Thank you, everyone.
So I didn't mean to make this all like stipends and reimbursements and all of that. This was specifically for board members to have a discussion. And so I really, really appreciate everybody's input. It had come up whether or not it's a benefit for us. I absolutely meant through Adrian's sign-up sheet. Pick a shift, do that. I'm just strongly encouraging, based on some of the feedback that I got from just folks stopping by the table. And when they realize that staff is there on their day off and board members are there, it means something. I think it really does. So I'm just encouraging us being the board, to sign up for Adrian's sign-up sheets as often as possible, please.
Thank you, Rosie. I think we're done with business unless Shally looks like she's intent on something.
I just wanted to thank Kai for raising that, because even though the board hasn't worked out and Kai's worked out, it's instructive for staff too. For example, for Adrian to let people know that rides are available and that this extends beyond the board. So I just want to
Yes.
raise that point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like I need to have that conversation with her tomorrow because her and I, you know, primarily do event staffing and needs for events. And maybe there's something we could do that's kind of a ride share listserv where, you know, available rides and needed rides can be discussed by people who need them and can offer them. And yeah, this sparked something in my head.
Good. Thank you. It's getting late.
You need a motion to adjourn?
I think we need an emotion to adjourn. How did you know that?
Because I'm tired too.
Can I jump in and mention something real quick?
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, and I think that we already know this, but Doug does a great job, and I want to give Doug that moment to soak that in.
Oh, stop. Yeah, but I did forget
love.
that we have two hip hop artists at Woodstock as well. We've got One of Many and Super Friends, and it's going to be amazing. And I will say, I know Warner Park's a long way away for some people, but we need to get our outreach beyond the isthmus. We have got to get out in other neighborhoods if we are going to survive. We need new listeners, we need new donors, and expanding into the north side is just the first step.
Yeah, and then to add to that too, as we're doing our outreach and our promotion, I think it's just really important in our verbiage to just understand that for the purposes of having bands at one section and one stage, but then you have to tear down and then set up the next band. Between that is where we've inserted the hip hop off to the side, but it doesn't make it any less than, and they're still considered main acts. We've just moved them over to encourage people to be moving around and getting up and doing things. So when you're posting information saying, hey, this is what we have at Woodstock, make sure that you're including all of the acts in, because there isn't, I don't want them to be left off as if just because it's not a band, it's not, they're less than celebrated. It's all inclusive, which is what we're all about. So
Thank
just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Tom, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, just really quick before we adjourn, I just wanted to wonder where we left Aaron. We have the DEI report, but I'm not sure where we left.
We haven't made we didn't make a motion at this meeting.
Okay.
Can we?
We could.
It's inappropriate for me to do it.
And Tom can't do it.
I'm happy to move, Dave, but I don't know what I have to say exactly. Can I just move that we hire Aaron, or is that just too succinct? Based on the DEI report today, I move that the board take action to make the change to full-time for Aaron with the job description that we saw in a previous meeting. How's that?
Ooh, I like that.
Yay.
So stand by. Marla, a lot is said in that. I want Marla to catch up in the minutes because the minutes are critical in this kind of an issue.
Rosie, Rosie, would you please repeat?
Sure. I am making an motion based on the DEI report that we saw today, August 18th, and the previous meeting's job description to move forward and hire Aaron in the position full-time.
Okay.
Does anybody think I should add something to that, or is that good?
Should we have a start date?
Starting September 1st. Buzz.
Can we do it at the beginning of the next pay period?
What is that, Doug?
What is it?
It's a week from Monday, or a week from Saturday, I guess.
What's the date?
Hang on, let me look at my calendar. Saturday is...
I mean, it could start on that Monday.
Okay, we're gonna start him on August 28th.
That would be great, because then that's just easier for bookkeeping.
And the title? What's the title? Do we remember?
No, that's why
Uh,
it's based on the
Digital and
previous.
audio production director.
Oh, there you go.
Video?
Digital,
Wasn't it digital and audio
Yes.
production director? Was that right?
I think so. So what'll happen is the president of the board needs to write an offer letter to Aaron. And based on this motion, that's me, and I will write this letter and then ask Aaron to sign it. And I will include a copy of the job description as we see it now. And that's how this will be accomplished. So so Marla, can you say the board directs the president to write an offer letter to Aaron Schultz for the position?
The board directs.
Assuming it passes, right?
Right.
Okay. Wish honest to goodness.
All right, I'm gonna move that. Okay, well, let's work on Rosie's motion or move. Something that works in 7 a.m.
Yeah. So I move.
right.
We're gonna need a second here somewhere.
I'll second it.
Marla seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye or raise their hands.
Aye.
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 All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Doug, do you have to abstain?
No, I vote with the staff and we are 100% for it. So
All right,
I feel it's appropriate to vote yes.
all right. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you, Doug, for bringing that up. And
No, that was Tom.
thank you, Tom, for bringing that up. And I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having my back, Tom.
He's been in limbo for a long time. I just like to say, welcome aboard.
Yeah, officially.
Yay, yay, yay.
Now
Um,
I move to adjourn.
Now, Rosie has moved to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Doug seconds the motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye or raise their hands.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no or give me a thumbs down. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you
Meeting,
Yeah,
very
good
much.
meeting.
Fantastic meeting, everybody.
Yeah, good meeting.
Thanks, all.